Welcome to the BTS BUZLINE channel. What if the smile you have trusted all this time was hiding a storm no one ever truly saw? And what if the truth behind that quiet expression could change the way you see him forever? Would you be ready to hear it? Or would it break your heart the moment you understand it? And before you go any further, ask yourself this. Are you prepared to uncover the sadness behind the strength, the silence behind the success, and the tears behind the fame? If you are, then stay with this story until the end. And don't forget to share your thoughts, leave a comment, and support by liking and subscribing, because what you are about to read is not just a story. It is a feeling that has lived quietly behind one of the most recognized faces in the world. Behind the calm gaze and the soft, almost unreadable smile, there exists a narrative that many fans have sensed but only a few have truly understood. A narrative filled with pressure, loneliness, quiet battles, and emotional scars that were never meant to be displayed under the bright lights of global fame. And yet, despite everything, he continued to stand, to perform, to create, and to smile in a way that made millions believe he was always okay. There is something deeply haunting about the idea that the people who inspire us the most often carry the heaviest burdens. And in his case, that truth feels even more real, more raw, and more painful, because his journey was never just about success. It was about survival in ways that many will never fully comprehend. And it is in those quiet, unspoken moments that the real story begins to reveal itself. Long before the stage lights, the sold-out arenas, and the deafening cheers, there was a young dreamer navigating a world that did not always welcome his ambitions, a world that often pushed back harder than it encouraged, where rejection was not occasional but constant, and where doubt did not come from strangers alone but sometimes from within, growing louder with every setback, whispering questions that had no easy answers. What do you do when your passion becomes your only escape, but also your greatest source of pain? How do you continue when the very thing you love demands sacrifices that slowly take pieces of you away? And how do you smile when your heart is quietly struggling to keep up with the expectations placed upon you? Expectations that never seem to fade no matter how much you achieve. There were days when exhaustion was not just physical but deeply emotional, days when the weight of everything felt unbearable, yet invisible to the world watching from the outside. Because from the outside, everything looked perfect. The performances were flawless, the music was powerful, and the persona was composed. But inside, there were battles that no camera could capture, moments of silence that held more truth than any public appearance ever could. It is easy to celebrate success, to admire talent, and to be inspired by achievements, but it is much harder to see the cost behind it all: the sleepless nights, the quiet breakdowns, the internal conflicts, and the constant pressure to be not just good, but exceptional, not just present, but unforgettable, and not just human, but somehow beyond human, as if vulnerability itself was not allowed. And yet, despite everything, there were glimpses, small, almost fleeting moments where the mask slipped just enough for people to notice, moments where his words carried a deeper weight, where his expressions hinted at something more, something heavier, something real. And for those who paid close attention, those moments spoke louder than any performance ever could. There is a certain kind of pain that does not shout. It does not demand attention. It does not make itself obvious. Instead, it settles quietly, becoming part of who you are, shaping your thoughts, your emotions, and even your silence. And perhaps that is the kind of pain he learned to carry, not because he wanted to, but because he had no choice. Imagine standing in front of thousands, even millions of people, hearing them call your name, feeling their love and admiration, and yet, somewhere deep inside, feeling a loneliness that cannot be filled by applause, a kind of emptiness that does not disappear no matter how loud the crowd becomes, a feeling that stays with you even when everything else fades away. What makes this story even more heartbreaking is not just the pain itself, but the way it was hidden behind strength, behind dedication, and behind a smile that became both a shield and a symbol, a way to protect not only himself, but also the people who believed in him. Because sometimes, the strongest people are the ones who choose to carry their pain silently so that others can continue to feel happiness. There were times when the pressure became overwhelming, when the expectations felt suffocating, and when the line between passion and exhaustion began to blur, moments when the question was no longer about success, but about endurance, about how much more he could take before something inside finally gave in. And yet, even in those moments, he continued, not because it was easy, but because giving up was never an option he allowed himself to consider. And perhaps that is what makes this story so powerful, so emotional, and so unforgettable, because it is not just about sadness. It is about resilience, about the quiet strength that does not seek recognition, about the ability to keep moving forward even when everything inside tells you to stop, and about the courage to face each day with a smile, even when that smile hides more than it reveals. For fans, this realization can be overwhelming, even heartbreaking, because it changes everything. It transforms admiration into something deeper, something more personal, more emotional, and more real. Because suddenly, it is not just about the music or the performances. It is about the person behind it all, the struggles, the sacrifices, and the story that continues to unfold in ways that are both inspiring and deeply moving. And maybe that is the question that lingers long after the story is told, the question that stays in your mind and refuses to fade. How many times have we looked at someone and believed they were okay, simply because they smiled? How many stories have we missed because we never looked beyond the surface? And how many silent battles are being fought right now by people who seem perfectly fine? In the end, the smile remains, just as it always has, calm, composed, and quietly powerful. But now it carries a different meaning, a deeper understanding, and a reminder that behind every expression, there is a story waiting to be heard. A story that deserves not just attention, but empathy, respect, and understanding. Because sometimes the strongest message is not the one that is spoken, but the one that is felt.